I didn't notice it at first, not in the way you might expect. It wasn't a missed anniversary or a strange perfume or an unfamiliar name in her phone. It wasn't something loud or obvious. The unraveling started quietly. In fact, I think it began the night she stopped finishing her tea. My wife, Adrienne, used to make jasmine tea every night before bed. She never drank it fast. It was more of a ritual, something slow, grounding. Even if the day had been hectic, even if we were too tired to talk, she'd sip that tea with both hands wrapped around the mug, always leaving a thin ring of steam on the kitchen counter. But one evening, I noticed the mug was full, untouched, cold. That was the first crack. My name is Halden Whitlow, 51. Husband. Woodworker. Not the poetic type, not the kind of man who usually dwells on details like tea mugs. But when you spend 20 years building a life with someone, you learn to read the quiet things. The absences. The silences between the words. That night, when she walked through the door from her supposed monthly dinner with the girls, something about her felt distant. Her smile reached her lips but didn't even try for her eyes. She told me she was tired and went straight to bed. No tea. No conversation. Just the rustle of sheets and the hollow sound of a door closing behind her. I stood in the kitchen alone, staring at that untouched mug. I should have gone to bed. Should have brushed it off. But I didn't. Instead, I opened the cabinet, made my own cup, and sat at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, listening to the walls of our home breathe around me. Listening for the woman I'd build a life with. She never came back downstairs. And that's when I knew something had shifted. Not something small. Something permanent. That night was the beginning of the end. And the worst part? I still didn't know just how far it would all fall apart. 2 decades of marriage shattered in a single night. The heartbreaking truth. I didn't confront her. Not that night. I didn't even mention the tea. I just sat there, alone at the kitchen table, letting the steam rise from my own mug like it might carry an answer with it. I watched it fade into the air, like all the things we used to say to each other. The truth is, I didn't want to be right. I didn't want that cold mug to mean anything. It's astonishing how fast your brain starts negotiating with itself when your heart suspects betrayal. Maybe she really was just tired. Maybe her friends had been distant. Maybe she was going through something she couldn't put into words yet. People change. But do they change this quietly? The next morning, I acted normal. Habit has a way of carrying you when reality starts to crumble. I brewed coffee, sliced fruit, set her mug on the counter like I always did. Adrienne came down in her robe, hair still damp from the shower. She gave me that same soft smile she always did. But I saw it again, that same disconnection. Like she was mimicking warmth from memory. Her eyes didn't meet mine for more than a second. I tried to fill the space with easy conversation, asking about the dinner, who showed up, what they talked about. She answered everything in short, gentle lies. I don't know how I knew they were lies. I just did. After she left for work, I sat down on the edge of our bed and stared at the imprint she left on the sheets. And for the first time in years, I felt like a guest in my own home. That day at the workshop, I was useless. My hands were moving, sanding a cherrywood panel for a dining table I'd been working on all month, but my head was back at home, rewinding every conversation, every kiss that felt just a little too quick, every business trip that popped up suddenly over the last year. Were there signs? Was she waiting for me to notice? Or worse, was she counting on me not to? I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not my brother Milo, not my coworker Ed, who knows more about me than most people do. There was a strange sense of shame wrapped around even the suspicion, as if admitting the possibility of betrayal meant I'd somehow failed to see it coming. I felt stupid. But more than anything, I felt displaced, like someone had quietly rearranged all the furniture in my life while I was asleep. That evening, Adrienne got home late again. No warning. No explanation. I asked how her day was, and she just said, busy, as she breezed past me, dropping her purse on the chair like it was any other Wednesday. I watched her climb the stairs, her silhouette framed in the dim hallway light, and something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was more like a quiet realization that the person walking away from me wasn't walking toward me anymore. She hadn't been for a long time. Around 11 p.m., when I thought she was asleep, I sat down in the living room, lights off, just letting the house speak. Our home had always had a particular sound at night, the creak of floorboards settling, the faint ticking of the wall clock, the distant hum of the refrigerator. But that night, there was a stillness I couldn't explain, like the house was holding its breath. I wandered into her office. I never snooped before, never needed to, but something compelled me to open her laptop, which she usually kept closed. I didn't know what I was looking for. And honestly, I hoped I wouldn't find anything. I wasn't even planning to search. I just opened it. It didn't ask for a password. She must have used it earlier and forgotten to close out. The screen flickered to life, and there it was, a chat window still open, halfway through a conversation she hadn't finished typing. The words were like a kick to the chest. Last night was exactly what I needed. I've never felt more alive than when I'm with you. I'll call when he falls asleep. No name. Just a letter. Or. I stared at the message for what felt like a full hour. My first instinct wasn't to scream or cry or throw the laptop across the room. It was silence. Stillness. My brain disconnected from my body like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. The warmth left my limbs. My throat tightened. I didn't even blink. 20 years. 20 years of birthdays and inside jokes and Sunday morning pancakes, and this is where we were? A message that felt like a bullet laced in honey. And in that moment, I still wasn't angry. I was something worse. Invisible. I closed the laptop gently, like it was fragile. Like the moment deserved care even if the truth it held didn't. I stood in the dark, alone in a house I thought we built together. But now, it just felt like I'd been renting space in someone else's dream. Adrian was asleep upstairs peacefully, as if nothing had shifted. As if her world was untouched. But mine was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the living room, watching the shadows move across the walls. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't even know what I wanted. All I knew was that the woman I thought I knew, the life I thought I had quietly slipped away, one untouched cup of tea at a time. There's a kind of grief that doesn't start with screaming or slamming doors. It begins with small hesitations. A breath held too long. A look that lingers in the wrong place. A smile that never really reaches you. That's what I woke up with the next morning, not panic, not fury, but that quiet kind of grief. The one that doesn't beg for attention, but instead seeps into every corner of your day. I didn't bring it up to Adrian. I didn't ask her about the message or the name. I didn't demand answers. I should have. Maybe that's what most people would have done. But instead, I found myself waiting. For what? I still don't know. Maybe I was hoping she'd come clean. Maybe I thought she'd sit across from me, pour herself a cup of tea, and say, "Halden, I've made a mistake." But she didn't. That day passed like any other. She kissed me on the cheek, picked up her keys, and left. Like the house wasn't full of invisible fire. And I let her go. That afternoon, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years, walking without a destination. No phone, no earbuds, no errands to run. Just walking. Through streets I knew like the back of my hand. Through neighborhoods where kids had grown up. Through seasons that had changed right in front of me. Everything looked the same. And yet, I felt like a ghost moving through it all. I passed the park where we used to take our boys when they were toddlers. There was still that old wooden bench under the oak tree, the one Adrian used to sit on while the kids ran circles around her. I remembered how she used to laugh back then, open and real and loud, like she wasn't afraid of being heard. I hadn't heard that laugh in years. And that's when it hit me. Maybe the betrayal wasn't the message. Maybe it wasn't even the man behind the letter, or maybe it started years ago, in all the moments we chose to let silence answer our questions. In the quiet mornings where we passed each other in the hallway like polite strangers. In the way we said, "I'm fine," instead of, "I'm lonely." I wanted to believe we'd grown comfortable. But maybe we'd just grown apart, so slowly that I didn't notice until it was too late. I sat on that bench for almost an hour. No music. No distractions. Just the wind pushing the leaves across the grass and the sound of my own breathing. I didn't cry. I wanted to. But it was like my body had forgotten how. Instead, I just felt weight. Not on my chest, but everywhere. In my fingers. In my neck. Even my shadow looked heavier. When I got home, she was already there. She'd lit a candle in the kitchen, the lavender one she always used when she was trying to reset the energy, whatever that meant. She looked up from her laptop and smiled like nothing had happened. Asked if I wanted leftovers. And I said yes. We sat across from each other in silence, eating the same pasta we'd had a dozen times before. But it tasted like something from a life that no longer existed. After dinner, she told me she had a virtual call for work and slipped into her office. I sat alone again, wondering if I was becoming someone I wouldn't recognize. Someone who knew the truth but refused to speak it. Someone who clung to the shape of a marriage that had long lost its substance. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, watching the shadows shift as cars passed outside. I reached out my hand to where she used to lay beside me. Empty. Cold. She was downstairs, still in her office. I knew it. And that's when the thought first entered my mind. A thought I hadn't allowed before, not even in the darkest corners of my doubt. What if she doesn't love me anymore? Not in a cruel way. Not in an explosive, dramatic, movie scene way. But in the quiet way people stop watering plants and just wait for them to wither. What if she's been waiting for me to notice? What if, deep down, she hoped I'd let go first, so she wouldn't have to say the words? I didn't sleep at all that night. I just laid there, watching the space beside me. The same space I'd shared for 20 years, and wondering how love could disappear so silently. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. The strange part is, nothing actually happened the next day. No reveal. No confrontation. No answers falling from the sky. And yet, it was probably the most important day of my life. Because I started seeing the world differently. It began when I opened the refrigerator. I reached for the milk, and that's when I noticed there were 2 cartons. Different brands. Different sizes. Adrian and I always bought the same kind. Organic. Blue cap. Habit mostly. One of those small choices that feel like compromise, like partnership. But one of the new ones was almond milk, unsweetened. Adrian hated almond milk. Or at least, she used to. I stood there for an uncomfortable amount of time, holding the door open, just staring at it like it was some foreign object. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask. I just closed the door. Later, I saw her phone face up on the couch, a calendar reminder flashing. Meeting at 6. Hotel Mirren Room, 410. That's all it said. No names. No clues. Just that. And she didn't mention it when she left at 5:30 wearing a dress I hadn't seen in years. A dress I bought her, back when we still gave each other gifts for no reason. I watched her walk out the door without a word. She didn't even look back. Now, this is where most people would follow her. Or call the hotel. Or blow everything up. But I didn't do any of that. I just sat in the living room. No TV. No lights. Just the slow ticking of the clock and the low hum of a life unraveling beneath the surface. I sat there for 3 hours, not because I was frozen, but because I needed to know what kind of man I really was. What did I want from her? From us? Did I want the truth? Or did I want the illusion to stretch a little longer so I wouldn't have to admit that I'd been living in a shell of a marriage? At around 9, I walked into our bedroom. Her perfume still lingered in the air, that soft, expensive floral she always wore when she wanted to be noticed. It wasn't for me. Not this time. And maybe not for a long time. I opened her drawer. I don't know why. I hadn't touched it in years. Everything inside was perfectly arranged. Scarves folded like hotel linens, lotions lined up by color. But something was missing. A small box I'd given her on our 10th anniversary. It was an antique ring box, deep green velvet, with a rose gold band inside. She used to keep it there, always. I asked her once why she didn't wear it, and she said it was too delicate, too special. But it's gone now. She took it with her. That meant something. Maybe everything. And still, I didn't feel rage. That never came. What came instead was this cold, steady realization, like a curtain slowly being pulled back. She was gone, emotionally. Possibly for years. I just hadn't wanted to see it. That night, I did something I hadn't done in over a decade. I slept on the couch. Not because we'd argued. Not because I'd been kicked out. I just couldn't lie beside someone who was living an entirely different life inside the same walls. The strange thing was, I slept better. I didn't expect that. I thought I'd be wide awake, counting ceiling cracks or clutching a pillow for comfort. But no, I sank into the couch cushions like they knew how to hold me better than she did. No dreams. No noise. Just the weight of the truth resting quietly on my chest. And when I woke up at 4 a.m., the house still dark, I realized something else. I hadn't missed her. That scared me more than anything else. The next morning, she noticed. Not the silence. Not the empty side of the bed. She noticed the coffee. I made 2 cups like always, but I left hers black. No oat milk, no cinnamon dusting on top. Just bitterness in a cup, served how I used to take it before I changed for her. She didn't say anything at first. She just stared at it. Then, quietly, she asked, "No oat milk?" "No," I said. That was all. And we sat there, not drinking anything. That moment lasted maybe 7 seconds. But it said more than any fight could. Because she didn't ask again. She just nodded, turned away, and started buttering toast with the kind of precision you only use when you're avoiding a subject you both know exists. She didn't touch the coffee. And I didn't care. It's strange how detachment doesn't announce itself like pain does. It just shows up, uninvited, on a Wednesday morning while you're putting away the knife you've used for 20 years. That's what this was, the early stages of detachment. And it didn't feel angry. It felt clean. We didn't talk much that day. She left the house around 10, said she had errands. But it was the way she said it that stood out. Like a line she'd practiced, casual but vague. The kind of line you use when the truth is heavier than you want to carry into the room. When she was gone, I didn't check her phone. Didn't log into her laptop. I didn't need to anymore. Whatever was happening had already moved beyond evidence. I wasn't looking for answers. I was listening to silence. I found myself upstairs again, standing in the hallway outside our bedroom door. That hallway used to be full of life, you know? Laundry baskets in the corner, the boys' drawings taped up on the wall, giggles spilling out from movie nights. But it felt abandoned now, like a hotel hallway after checkout. I opened our closet just to look. Half her dresses were gone. And it wasn't just a seasonal switch. There were hangers, naked, twisted slightly to the side like they'd been pulled down in a hurry. Empty spaces where her things should have been. Gaps that didn't just feel physical. They felt like erasure. It hit me all at once. She was leaving in stages. Not in one blow. Not in one packed suitcase. This wasn't a runaway train. It was a quiet disassembly. Apart every few days. A drawer at a time. Slowly enough that it wouldn't be obvious unless you were counting. And I had started counting. I sat on the floor, knees up, back against the wall of that half-empty closet. I stayed there for over an hour. Just me and a space that used to hold the woman I loved, or maybe the version of her I'd created. A version who didn't lie. A version who still wanted me. That was the part that kept clawing at my chest. Not the betrayal, but the fact that I didn't know who I'd been married to for the last few years. Had she changed? Or had she just stopped pretending? That night, when she came home, she walked right past me in the living room. No eye contact. No small talk. She said she had a headache and was going to bed early. I didn't follow. I sat there in the dark with the TV on mute. A documentary was playing, something about deep-sea currents and invisible ecosystems. At one point, I realized I was staring at jellyfish moving in slow motion. They pulsed without resistance, just drifting with the water, undisturbed by anything. And I thought, that's her now. Adrian. She's somewhere else entirely. Drifting. Unreachable. I stayed there until the screen went black. I used to believe that endings had a shape. That they looked like slammed doors, packed suitcases, long arguments stretched across hardwood floors. I thought there would be tears. Maybe voices raised. A final act. Some kind of breaking point you could point at later and say, that's where it happened. But I've learned that endings don't always look like endings. Sometimes they come dressed as routines. As silence. As her asking if you've seen the laundry detergent, and you realizing mid-reply that she's already started living a different life inside the same kitchen. That morning, she made her own coffee. It sounds small, but it wasn't. She didn't wait for mine. She didn't glance at the mug I usually set out for her. She just moved around me like I was a countertop. And I said nothing, not out of fear or shock, but because I was finally beginning to understand. We'd passed the moment of return. Quietly. Invisibly. Maybe months ago. I watched her stir almond milk into her cup, the kind she used to tease me for drinking. She always said it tasted like water and cardboard. Now it was her default. She didn't drink it. She just stirred and stirred and stirred. When she left, I stood in the doorway long after her car had disappeared. I wasn't waiting. I wasn't hoping. I was observing, cataloging the moment. The sound of our screen door closing. The faint scent of her shampoo still hanging in the air. The way our home, our supposed life together, adjusted back to silence within seconds. It wasn't a reaction anymore. It was research. I found myself walking upstairs and standing at the edge of the hallway. Again, like I had the past few mornings. There's this one spot where the floorboards creak, even if you're standing still. It used to drive Adrian crazy. She asked me to fix it for years, but I never did. That spot still creaks. And I realized that was probably the last thing in this house that still reacts to me. I walked into the guest room. We hadn't used it in ages. The windows were shut, the light bulb dim, the air stale, but I stood there and just let the quiet press against my skin. This room used to belong to our younger son, back before he moved out. Back when the hallway felt like a living artery, not a museum. On the dresser was a photograph, me, Adrian, and both boys at Lake Windermere, 2 summers ago. We looked happy, but I stared at my own face in the frame, and I didn't recognize the man. He looked so sure, so unaware. I opened a drawer, slowly, like it might betray me if I moved too fast. Inside, a half-used candle, one of Adrienne's old scarves, and a handwritten card she gave me on our 15th anniversary. I unfolded it. Her handwriting was still careful, deliberate. It read, "You see me better than anyone ever has, even when I try to hide." I read it twice, and the third time, I didn't feel warmth. I felt distance, because I don't think she believes that anymore. I think someone else sees her now, someone she doesn't have to hide from. And the worst part? I don't even blame her. That's what grief does when it stretches out over years instead of days. It loses its edges. You stop asking whose fault it was and start wondering how long it's been broken without anyone noticing. And then you begin to realize it's not about who cheated or who lied or even who left first. It's about who stopped being seen. And I think she stopped seeing me long before I stopped trying to be seen. That night, she came home late. No explanation. No apology. She hung up her coat, gave me a small, automatic smile, and disappeared into the bedroom without a word. I didn't follow her. Instead, I stood in the kitchen, listening to the house breathe. And for the first time in a long time, I stopped pretending. We weren't married anymore. We were just two people waiting for the other to admit it. The strangest part is how easily a shared life becomes divided without ever being discussed. No confrontation. No final declaration. Just absence, redistributed across routines. She no longer places her phone screen down. I no longer ask where she's going. Her keys jingle differently now, sharper, more hurried. My footsteps are quieter. I move differently in the house now, like a guest. There's this drawer in our hallway console, the third one from the top. We used to keep notes there. Grocery lists, doodles from the kids, sometimes poems, folded small like secrets. That drawer is empty now. I noticed it yesterday when I went looking for a pen. Not even dust, just space. And I stood there for a moment longer than I should have, staring at it. The way you stare at the last thing someone left behind. She wasn't home. I didn't know where she was. But it didn't worry me. That absence, the not knowing, used to be unimaginable. Now it feels routine. That's the part one can't shake. The fact that I've adapted to this version of her, to this hollowed-out version of us. That I've started scheduling my grief between emails and laundry loads. Around 6:30, I heard her car pull into the driveway. But I didn't move. I stayed in the hallway, beside the drawer, listening to the rhythm of her heels crossing the tile. Her voice filtered through the air, light, distant. She was on the phone, laughing softly, not the laugh she uses with me. I waited until I heard her go upstairs before I stepped into the kitchen. We didn't speak that night. I ate alone. Pasta with olive oil and lemon. No salt. I forgot the salt. And that was the most honest meal I'd had in months. Later, I sat by the window. No television. No music. Just darkness settling into the glass. I thought about her hands. The way they used to reach for mine without thinking. The way she used to trace my wrist when we were half asleep. I haven't felt her touch in I don't know how long. I wonder who she touches now. But I don't let the thought linger. It's not pain I fear. It's the weight of knowing it no longer matters. At some point, I found myself walking through the house with a notepad. I didn't plan to. I just started writing small things down. Objects. Moments. Things that still felt like mine. Not out of pettiness. Just inventory. The green mug with the chipped rim, still mine. The book with her name scribbled in the corner, no longer. The spare key under the potted fern, shared. The anniversary card tucked behind the photo frame, faded. I wasn't preparing for a divorce. I wasn't packing bags. I wasn't even making decisions. I was simply acknowledging what had already changed. I ended the list with a sentence I didn't expect. She left. She just didn't move out. That night, she fell asleep with the door closed. I left the hallway light on. It ended on a Sunday. Not because of anything she said. Not because of anything I discovered. In fact, it wasn't an ending in the traditional sense at all. It was a moment. Quiet. Still. And, in a strange way, kind. We were in the same room, for once. The kitchen. She was scrolling through her phone, leaning against the counter. I was making breakfast, eggs and toast. She asked if we had any avocados. I said no. She nodded. And that was it. But something shifted. Something inside me, subtle, but final. I realized I wasn't angry. I wasn't holding on. I wasn't even waiting anymore. All the wait, the questions, the hollow guesses about where she went or who she became, they no longer asked to be answered. I had survived the silence. I had learned to breathe in the stillness between us, and I had reached the end of something without needing it to explode. Later that day, I went for a drive. Not far, just out to the edge of town, where the road turns into gravel and the houses thin out. There's a small overlook out there where the river curves, framed by tall birch trees that whisper when the wind moves through them. I parked the car and sat on the hood. Nothing profound. No tears. Just me, the wind, and that quiet ache in my chest that finally felt manageable. I took out my notebook. The same one I'd been writing in, quietly, each day. This time, I didn't list what I'd lost. I listed what I still had. My hands still steady. My work still honest. My son still mine. My voice still mine. Myself still here. I didn't leave Adrienne that day, and she didn't leave me. But we both knew in that quiet kitchen, over forgotten avocados and unsalted toast, that something was over. And it didn't need to be mourned with shouting. Just released. We had tried. We had shared a life. And in many ways, we still would, in echoes and photos, in the memory of who we were when we were younger and softer. But our time was done. Our bond had loosened. Our story had changed chapters. Weeks later, she moved into a small apartment near her studio. There were no lawyers. No drama. Just boxes, labeled neatly. She hugged me at the door before she left. A real hug. Not out of guilt. Not out of pity. Just something resembling gratitude. Take care of yourself, she said. I already am, I replied. And I meant it. These days, the house feels different. Not emptier, just clearer. I still cook too much for one. I still pause before unlocking the door, half expecting her to be on the other side. But it no longer hurts. It just lives there, like a photo you keep in a drawer. Present, but not pressing. I've started sanding a new table in the shop. Oak this time. Clean lines. No embellishments. Just something simple and solid. Like I want to be now. And if I've learned anything from all of this, it's that sometimes the most honest kind of love is letting go, not in anger, but in grace. Because endings, I've found, don't have to break you. Sometimes, they quietly set you free.